Are you aware of the Shiza-Niyama Index?
Probably an advisor that has a client-centric mindset.
The fact that many of these sectors have incredibly strong
and also create a bit of distance between the investment process.
Talking about CPD, I always refer to it as continuous.
I'm part of the legal counsel from 91 Asset Management.
You've got to be moving towards something, not away from something.
The concept of being an influencer or having influence in your network.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for another informative webinar. We recently featured Tim Slatter and Razan Oosthuizen in our talk on social media presence. And during that specific session, we briefly touched on the importance of keeping yourself safe online. And it actually started to make me think that, what is the cybersecurity situations currently in the financial advice space? How secure are we? How resilient are we? And so it led me to explore the topic a bit more. And now for those who may not know, in December 2021, the Prudential Authority and the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the FSCA, published the draft joint standard on cybersecurity and cyber resilience requirements for public consultation. Now, the draft joint standard sets out the minimum requirements and principles for sound practices and processes of cybersecurity and cyber resilience, 4 categories of specified financial institutions, which obviously will include some of the FSPs and some of the advisors on our call this morning. Now, the financial industry is prone, I suppose, to cyber attacks like phishing, malware, insider threats. And I thought it would be ideal if we can perhaps get an industry expert to come and share with us what they see in this space, the trends in this space, even maybe go into some of the jargon and explain a bit more and make us, in layman terms, understand some of these technical terms. So joining me on the call this morning is Professor Elmarie Bierman. She is the director and founder of the Cybersecurity Institute in South Africa, specializing in guiding organizations in identifying and managing cyber risks, as well as partnering with universities and institutes to provide specialized cybersecurity training to a global audience. There's also a part in her bio. I'm not sure if it should scare me or excite me, but I'm going to read this. She gained some experience in the nano-satellite environment, and she's also an extraordinary associate professor in the Department of Military Strategy, Faculty of Military Sciences at the University of Stellenbosch. It does sound very impressive. It sounds a bit like stuff we see in Hollywood and movies come out when you talk about these things. But Professor, I'd like you to maybe start and share with us this morning. Firstly, when we hear the word cybersecurity, I think we should maybe start to define what is, in your words, and maybe the definition by industry, what is cybercrime?
Well, thanks, Tanya. It sounds impressive, but the professor title only works at the bank. But if you want to get hands on more money, or at the library, actually.
Okay.
Cybercrime. There's a number of definitions, but I think the basis is that it's breaking the law. So there needs to be an associated law against that. Now, if we look at some of the definitions, then they sort of differentiate between your cyber-enabled crimes. In other words, that is where my traditional crime is now actually not in a physical space anymore, but I'm using some format of the digital technology. And of course, your cyber-dependent crimes. That is purely coming from this new cyberspace. So that is where you have, for instance, a denial of service, where they bring down a website and you can't have access to that, or you can't have access to your bank, or maybe some data set or so. Now, maybe a more funny question is if you listen to those definitions, and there was actually a case in South Africa where the guy was killed. Somebody hit him over the head with a laptop. So, do you define that then as cybercrime, which they did? But so we can play around with the different definitions. I think the problem is that cybercrime is becoming extremely complex. It's not just you know what, we have the internet and we have maybe a crime via email that somebody click on a link. But now it escalated so much because we always say in investigations, you know what, follow the money, and then you will get to the source. And your cyber criminals is just doing that. You know what, they are following the money. So I think especially within the financial sector, is that where the money is at. And if we look at the World Economic Forum, their latest stats, Interpol, they just published their 2023 stats, is that your financial sector is one of the highest hit, just because of, you know what, access to funds. The same with your legal entities. We saw quite a number of breaches there as well. So that in a nutshell is, we can go into, you know what, unpacking cybercrime, and you get quite a lot of categories. So if we look at the taxonomy of that, then it ranges, you know, from child pornography, sextortion, right through to your ransomware and your malwares and your actual breaching. So it's a very extremely diverse and wide field, and you know, that's one of the reasons I think that the FPSA has looked at providing some standards, so just to make it easier to know that you are protected against it.
You mentioned now some stats, but if we look at South Africa, perhaps, do you know how well we rank in terms of maybe our resilience to cybersecurity, or don't we at all? Are we very vulnerable in terms of perhaps, is there some sort of ranking?
Yeah, I think South Africa and part of Africa, it's quite unique. One, we don't have a national cert. We don't. If you look at the financial industry, that is so much regulated, you know, but actually over-regulated, whereby the cybersecurity part is not. Okay, so there's not. We're only beginning to see some regulations now with POPI coming into play. So in terms of that, we don't have on a national level that assistance or that national body that can guide this and to assist companies in becoming cyber resilient. So it's very much driven from the ground up. So that's why you will see that there's certain centers, like we have Fabric for the banks and your mobile technologies, that they run their own versions so that they enable their customers to stay safe, and to know, but these are, you know, what's currently happening within the field, and they need to protect against that. So you see there's certain sectors that is more, I would say, more resilient than your other sectors. But if we look at just you know what, your TransUnion breach, that was, you know, something like 75 million records of South Africans. The Experian one, it was another one that was around about 50 million. So now all of your data of all of us is out there. So that's why you get 300 calls per day, and they know everything about you. They know your address, your phone number, your ID. So that's not, your ID number is not, I don't see that as personal information anymore, because it is out there. So in terms of the financial sector, yes, in some sense, we are resilient. If we look at your banks as critical infrastructure, that they really had taken some huge measures to ensure that they stay safe. But I think dribbling down a bit to your lower level entities, I think that's where the problem is, because now you sit with a sector that they don't really understand what is happening within the cyber side. You know, it's like giving me a financial report. You know, I don't even understand what's a debit and a credit. So I need to get somebody to help me to understand that. And now if I need to comply now to suddenly something in the financial sector, I will be lost. No, I do understand that, you know, it goes the same way with in complying to this specific standard. But in terms of stats, around about an increase to especially the financial sector, last year 25%, just ransomware. So we see a number of our clients is, losing money. Large number of corporations in South Africa that are currently, if you go on certain sites on the dark web, you can actually follow that ransomware and see, but whose data they have, and that ticker to show that how long they still have to pay that ransom. But extortion is very high because they have all of these detail. And now if you take the detail that's out there, and I want to add your social media profile, and and then you have suddenly your AI technology with your deep fakes coming in, and you can basically create, the perfect phishing email. You can create, anything that sounds like me, looks like me, and somebody will believe, that is actually me.
And before I move on to my next question, I'm bringing up this now on a full screen because I wanted to quickly play a video for our audience. Hope this will play out now. But this is a deep fake situation. So you would have heard Prof. Bierman just referred now to deep fake. So in actual fact, it's using, for instance, AI then to generate a video where it might look like the person, might even sound like the person, but in actual fact, it's artificial intelligence that was used. Now, it is quite scary when they did show this to they surveyed people to ask them whether they actually could tell whether this was deep fake or not. And I'm going to play this video out, and then you guys will know now that it is a fake, but 42% of people in the survey said that they actually could tell the difference between a real image and a deep fake. So the question I think I can ask you guys that will look at this is, can you pick up that this image was, or this video was in actual fact, a fake?
Let's go to this conversation. There have been several videos doing the rounds on social media purporting to be of some SABC News anchors advertising a project by Elon Musk. Now, these ads are running on Facebook and YouTube mostly. Now, these deepfakes claim you can make as much as 30,000 Rand a day and sometimes even more, and that some prominent business people have already invested in this. But if you haven't seen them, have a look.
Breaking news, Elon Musk's project has alarmed the government and major banks. He has introduced a new secret investment that has made hundreds of people very rich. Last week, he appeared in public and announced his new project, which, according to him, can turn anyone into a millionaire within 5 to 6 months without any difficulties and with minimal investment of $250. The innovative businessman urged everyone to seize this incredible opportunity. And of course, a few minutes after the interview ended, the government called and requested that the interview not be broadcast, but it was too late.
I am providing access to my platform for my fellow countrymen, where I come from. To get the system up and running, a minimum investment of $250 is required. This is the minimum amount at which the system will start making profitable trades in the stock and cryptocurrency markets. To gain access, you need to register on the official website.
Perhaps you can share with us, in your professional opinion, thoughts on the FSCA guidelines. I'm going to maybe share with our audience a brief of this as well, because I think it will tie in a bit nicely with what you just mentioned now as well. But they mentioned that some of the requirements that financial institutions would need to comply with would be that financial institutions must establish a sound and robust process for managing their cyber risks, but they also promote the adoption of cybersecurity fundamentals and hygiene practices to preserve confidentiality, integrity, the availability of data on their IT systems. They have to ensure that they can undertake systematic testing and assurance regarding the effectiveness of their security controls. And then also, financial institutions must provide notifications by the regulated entities of material cyber incidents to the authorities. Now, if you listen perhaps to this, and I'm not sure if you've been in one part of these consultation processes before, but you perhaps have seen other industries implement these. Do you think the FSCA is moving in the right direction? And do you think these guidelines are going to be able to help the advisors? I mean, these are guys that typically see, like you mentioned, already an over-regulated industry, always feeling that it's an additional layer of costs when we need to implement these. But do you think this can perhaps potentially help and guide the industry?
Yeah, I think it's needed. First of all, I do understand the moans and the groans and the pains associated with that. So on the one side, I'm all for that. I'm all for bringing in, actually forcing your organizations to take security serious, because it's not going to go away. And the one thing about security is there's no end point. You're not going to reach a state where you say, okay, I've done it all. I've got all the solutions. That's unfortunately not. Because tomorrow your AI is progressing into higher levels. So now it changed your environment. We see with quantum computing coming in, that what is now encrypted, is not going to be encrypted in 5 years' time. So there's a continuous stream. And the more that we work towards establishing a management system whereby you manage your cyber risks. So the essence of that standard, the standard, that's a humongous standard. So we work through the standard and we map that to current standards, such as the ISO 27001. And also the NIST framework, and they've combined sectors of that to bring forward, okay, but these are the essential topics that they need to implement. So in terms of the implementation part, I do foresee some problems, because if you just read that standard, you will lose, I would think, a large part of your audience. Immediately, because when we talk about penetration testing and vulnerability assessments, maybe you just see the dollars, and how are you going to get people to do that? And on the other side is, but I'm running everything on Microsoft 365, so it's Microsoft's problem, and it's not. It's your problem. It's your data, and your data is vulnerable, and etc. So to me, it's about, yes, the standard is the one. It's now been through Parliament, so you guys have a 12-month period to comply to that standard, which is extremely short.
Yes.
Because establishing a management process, because it focuses on, you need to have a security committee that manages your security, and within that committee is then bringing in all your training, bringing in your technical controls, something like a cyber risk register. All of those things need to be in place. It's not something that you are going to do in a day's work. It's going to be quite some time, and of course policies and procedures. So from our perspective, because we take companies through that, is that we actually said, okay, but here's a box. There's and you can send, I will, if possible, you can, I will send you a link whereby they can test and go through some questions so that we can see, okay, but that's where you are at, and this is where you, and it's for free. I won't charge you yet for something there, but just have a possible, just to see where they are at. But it is, it's like the poppy craze, when poppy started, then and you still, and I still think, at 50% of the companies are not poppy compliant. But it is a move. We need to, the amount of money that we lose on a monthly, weekly, daily basis per cybercrime is immense, and we can certainly use that to more effect in other parts of the economy.
And I think I can imagine that most of the financial advisors on this call may already feel so overwhelmed because of, like we mentioned, there are so much almost jargon when we start to talk about cybersecurity. And I mean, I'm thinking of words that we've already mentioned, like phishing and malware and ransomware. And I think, firstly, companies obviously come under attack by these cyber criminals because the cyber criminals are after something, right? And I think that's what's so difficult. We're not sure what they are after. When you are in a physical crime, it's typically they steal your phone. You know this, but I assume cyber criminals are often after data, confidential information, it's not always just the money immediately. It's perhaps at first a bit of a, infiltrate your system to get certain things, right? So if we think about that, can you maybe give us examples of what these cyber criminals, almost like their modus operandi, what do they typically do? What have you seen? I mean, I suppose there are many cases, but let's bring it back to financial advisors. You have a small financial advice practice and you think, no, I'm fine. No one will hack my systems. I sit here in Pretoria East, no one will hack my WhatsApp or my email, but they could potentially, because you might have something that they want. And what would that be?
You have clients. Okay, so you have clients, you have access to banks, and you have access maybe to a home loan, to additional funding. So just from a personal point of view, now if you continue and you serve some clients, then of course then all of their client data. But coming back a bit, if we talk about the cyber actors or who's behind this, we need because that gives us an understanding of what their objectives are and what they are after. And we normally see the guy in the hoodie, and we assume that if you have a hoodie, then you're a cyber criminal of some sort. But that's your lower range. So if we look at the major forms of cybercrime, is actually state-sponsored. Okay, so you have your different governments that have different capacity in terms of cybercrime in the offensive side as well as the defensive side. Okay, so we have, for instance, we know China is very busy with that. They've got a number of cells in South Africa. We call them advanced persistent threats. So they are after IP. They are after engineering processes. They are after defense capabilities. So they can sort of reverse engineer that and continue to do that on their own. And the Russians, of course. We have a country such as North Korea that I don't think the citizens have access to the internet, but they have one of the most advanced cyber criminal networks that is sponsored by the state because, and that is financial oriented. They just want to bring in money because, there's so many sanctions against the country that they're not, they were sort of trying to level the playing field. I say, okay, but we will bring in the money by some other means. Now, all of these countries, such as your US, your Europe, your big cards, is that they continuously are in the game to gain access to systems, to sort of get access to vulnerabilities in software, so that they're not necessarily going to use that now. So maybe there's no exploit yet, but they just keep that for in case they will need that in some form of cyber attack. And now we see that escalated towards, if you look at Israel and Palestine, you look at the Ukraine and Russia. Because now you have suddenly the ability when somebody sends a missile to stop that, to stop that missile from firing. And the US has actually done that to North Korea. Quite interesting. So there's a number of attacks already that's taking place. So the cyber actor behind that. So now you have the state-sponsored countries. Now you have large mafia-controlled groups, and then you have criminal groups. If we look at the Carbonac group, for instance, they are from your Eastern Bloc countries. They made billions and billions in terms of gaining access to banking systems. So their focus is banking. They will spend, but it's specialist, it's reconnaissance. They will take some time to be in your system. If we look at ransomware, then it's not just one guy that does this. There's around about per month, 10,500 new ransomware variants that is seeing the light. Just because you have now one ransomware, if you click on the link, so you get an email, bogus, you click on the link and it starts encrypting your computer, your data. And you need to pay something to get that data back. And of course, it's virtual currencies. Now you can decide, okay, but maybe my backups is also encrypted. What is the cost associated? Am I going to no, I'm not going to pay. What they do then is they sell the data. So they first steal the data, then they encrypt it, and then they sell it. So they are going to make sure that they have the money. Now, these groups we actually refer to them as affiliates. So you have the one guy or the one group that will gain access to your system and say, hey, you know what, I've got access to company X, Y, and Z. Okay, so I'm selling that. So the next guy will take that and then he will move lateral within that network. So maybe he's got your login and password. Okay, so they can gain access to your machine and maybe some part of your SharePoint or some part of your OneDrive, but they want to get to, you know what, the main peanut in die pocket, you know what, they want the CEO there. And it takes time that they are in the network. And then they gain that information. So it's you have to understand who's behind this. It's not just that lonely guy. They are there. They will try to do that. And you see a lot with your scams on Facebook. You know, if I look at the number of calls we get on a daily basis with people saying, somebody hacked my Facebook, what do I need to do? Is what do they do with that? You know, they want to gain access to your friends, and then they want to you know, sort of pretend to be your friend so that they can do something else, whether it's a romance scam, whether it's to say, I need money, I lost my wallet, and can you help me? And I'm so lonely. And this morning I was actually reading about pig butchering. I love these terms, where they come up with this. Now, pig butchering is now, especially within the financial sector, is a sort of hybrid scam. So that let's say you're on a WhatsApp network where you play around with cryptocurrencies, or you have a platform where you buy and sell shares and investments or whatever. And then somebody else is also on that platform continuously, and you talk technical sense, and you know, did you see Bitcoin is going up and Ripple is going down and whatever. But that is a false profile, and it's normally it's some beautiful woman of lekker met 6-pack there, and then what they do is they make friends, and then they convince you after they gain your trust, after 6 months or a year, but they've got this platform that and they are investing in that. So then the guy tries that, invest maybe, you know what, the 30,000, and say, okay, but let's just see if I can get my money back, and if it's working. It does work. And you know what, the latest one that we worked with is they ended up that he transferred, you know, a 10 million, and then flips, everybody runs away and say, okay, but this is a so it's all of that is integrated. So if you look at security, it's not just my security of my company. You're part of that. You know, it's so integrated. It's not like the olden days we have somebody that does the IT and sit there in the dungeon somewhere. It's in every cell of your business, of your life, and you can't get away with it.
You would typically have your, let's say, a bit of a larger financial advice business. You have maybe a couple of senior financial advisors, and then you have your assistant financial planners. Are people in your business sometimes then your vulnerability? Not just the system. I mean, because you've spoken now about how it's, you know, like they and I think there was a word, phishing and swordfish and those type of terminology where they target the CEOs or the bigger people within the group, but they start with these, you know, a junior person that might unknowingly share information that they should not. Or so I think people, why I'm getting to this is that when we build a system now for an advisor, where we always think it's just on the actual hardware, the systems or the software that you implement, it could also be potentially people within your company that's not well trained, and they might be the vulnerability within your system.
95% of the time, I would say it's insiders. Insider attack is still, and I don't think we're going to really get away with it. So it's way easier for somebody to gain access to your systems by going the social engineering route than really hacking into. I'm not going to hack into Absa Bank, Sommer Net. Okay, they, you know what, those controls are in place, and you're not just going to get access there. But if I rather go the personal point of view and then do a reconnaissance on person X in some position. Now, the economy plays a role there because in terms of people not having money,
Yes.
okay, your salary is not enough. They have to look after so many people in the family. So if you go to somebody and they're not really committed to this company and you say, listen, I'm going to give you 10,000 Rand. If you can just take this USB and you plug it in somewhere. And now that data is sent to somebody else. So that's an extreme thing. The same with getting an email, clicking on a link. Oh, you know what, this cat is they found it somewhere, or this dog. They know what your profile is. You know what, they get to know that. They can see on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, okay, but you are really a softie. And then you will see these scams on Facebook coming in to say, oh, but this child is ill. But she's been ill and dying now for 20 years, you know what, and it's still the same picture, you know what, but they play on your emotions, and you want to click and you want to help, and you click on that, and then you have the malware that installs on your computer, and of course then it does it thing within the company network. So that in terms of training, but not just training. Training is a once-off thing. You know, it needs to be a cyber awareness education, that you don't take your ID and make copies of that and go to the nearest robot and, you know what, start giving it out as a pamphlet. Why would you do that? You know what, you put yourself at risk there. You don't go to Tilbrow late at night or ever during the day also, but of course, you know, so that there's some situational awareness there, and there needs to be a situational awareness on cyberspace as well. Just to think twice that, okay, but what am I doing now? Okay, so, and I think I want to connect there in terms of your controls that you have within your insiders, is that you have to train your people. And train them continuously. And just sending them an email to say that, you know what, beware of that and that scam, that's not enough, because people don't read at all. You have to be cultural specific. Notice that, you know what, if you look at your millenniums, they're more on their phones. You don't know what they're doing, but and I think they're more dangerous in a certain sense, although they grew up with the technology. That they are dangerous in terms of bringing them into the company. But yes, but you can put in controls to guard against that. You can put in controls to make sure that, you know what, the data doesn't go out of your perimeter. And I know that perimeter is expanding because we work, you know, all over the place.
Yes,
yeah.
And maybe that could lead to our second question of working remotely now, because I've been thinking about this in the sense that Wi-Fi networks, connecting to open Wi-Fi networks, is that really as dangerous as we often think? I mean, you go and work in a restaurant or a coffee shop and you connect to their Wi-Fi. Is that something we should or shouldn't do?
Let me give you a practical example. So if I go to the Mug and Bean, and I take my phone or my laptop and I create a hotspot, and I name the hotspot Mug and Bean Open Wi-Fi. Okay, so now if anybody connects to that, they are connecting to me first. Okay, so all of that communication goes through my computer. So I can capture all of that packets that goes, you know, from your computer, wherever you're going into the Via Villa World. So no, just no. Don't ever, you know, I know data is extremely expensive, but if you have to, then you have to make use of a virtual private network. And that, because it encrypts the data communication.
And a virtual private network is also known as a VPN, right?
VPN, and not the free versions. You can start off with the free versions. The one that I normally use is Nord. NORD VPN. The other one, if you have your antivirus systems, your Kaspersky's and your Bitdefenders, they all come with a VPN. So you can just switch it on and it masks your data so that you are safe.
And I think it's maybe now a nice, also maybe just to add to what we've just said, I'm going to show a very quick video clip that I found, which I found, as the journalist in this video also states, quite disturbing, is how quickly someone can be hacked.
We're going to show us how easy it is to hack into a computer. So this is my personal computer.
So in this attack, we will pretend to be a wireless access point that you normally connect to, let's say, in a hotel. So if you go in there and you try to log into something called Four Seasons Guest.
Okay.
As you'd expect, it's, the Wi-Fi is around, you'd want to be able to connect to it, and a person who just arrived will think, I'm a guest, I should connect to the guest network.
Sure.
So now if you go to a website that you would normally use, like yelp.com.
Okay.
And normally what happens when you go to a website just after you've logged into a hotel network, it says, oh, please log in, you're a new user. So here it's asking for your room number and last name, which it would normally do. Right? And actually I can see your information show up here. And so part of the attack is that it tries to convince you that you need to do an update. Your machine is out of date and it's vulnerable. So you want to click on the download button because it's sort of convincing you to do this. And once you've executed, that's it. You already have been exploited. I can see it here. It says Aditya's MacBook. Let's say if I want to take a screenshot of your of your webcam, right? Okay. So I have a special command here for essentially accessing your little camera right here. So if I say execute. There we go.
I just saw a green light pop up there for a second.
For a second, but now it's already too late. Now I already know what's going on around you.
Oh, wow.
There we go. This particular attack, it recorded the picture, but you can actually record the video. You can also record sound if you wanted to.
That's really disturbing.
You can execute things on the behalf. So what I'm going to try to do is actually open the calculator application.
Okay.
There we go.
There's my calculator. It just popped up.
I can basically execute any types of commands I want on your behalf.
So what can people do to protect themselves?
You should sort of be on the lookout for anytime you sort of do an action and then the computer asks you to do something on your behalf. Like, you downloaded something and said, hey, please enter your password. If you didn't expect that to happen, maybe you should kind of stand back a little bit and say, well, does it normally happen when I log into a Wi-Fi access point?
I think another question I'm going to ask, and you're probably also going to tell me, I actually know the answer to this question, but let's put this out there. Passwords. I'm going to ask us, should you have the same password for every website or every platform or every app you use?
No.
And then a second question would be, should your password be password 123? Because yes,
no,
I know I'm making a huge joke perhaps from this, but it's actually why I'm asking it in that way, is that I think that's still what we do. We find ourselves, you're afraid that you might forget passwords, so you make the same across platforms, and then obviously also trying to make it as simple sometimes for yourself as possible. But why I'm also phrasing it like that is that I suppose passwords are your first line of defense, right? So how do what's your advice perhaps on passwords?
Maybe just look at the consequences. So if you reuse a password, so let's say my LinkedIn password is the same as my Dropbox one. Now Dropbox just had another breach. Okay, so now that is available. So although that passwords are encrypted, it's not necessary that I can get access even if it's breached, but it's actually a hash that is stored. So what I do then is to go onto all of your other platforms and try exactly that password. Because I know that, we're the creatures of habit, we're lazy, we will bypass any security thing. And it's just doing that. So no, don't reuse a password. The password needs to be now at least 13 characters. Okay, below that, it's useless. Just because our technology makes it easier to to decrypt that. Have to use special characters, and always do a multi-factor authentication. So your password is not enough. Password is actually crap, but we're stuck with that technology. But use multi-factor authentication, whether it's a PIN sent to your phone, whether it's another email that is sent, whether you have an authenticator app, something like that. But wherever possible, if that system allows for that, is make use of multi-factor authentication.
And then another thing that I think we can maybe share with our advisors, because I've seen, and I think this is, I should say kudos to the advisors that has implemented now this, is that they have started removing banking details of, let's say, your platform. So you work with Allen Gray and they've got a bank account, and instead of having that bank account on their application forms, which is now very easily accessible to many people, or even confirming a bank account in an email, they started avoiding that. And I think it's one of those very good basic things to maybe implement. But what some of them have now been doing is that they've moved to WhatsApp and say that I will confirm with the client on WhatsApp, perhaps confidential information and personal information or banking details. So my question is perhaps WhatsApp, how secure is it? I mean, for the average person, you see, they say that it's also encrypted both ways, or I'm not even sure how they exactly phrase it when you enter your WhatsApp. But perhaps my question to you then is, how secure is WhatsApp to maybe start using that as a means of communication, especially in financial advice practices? Is it something we can trust?
Yeah, I want to say yes and no. WhatsApp makes use of its own encrypted technology to encrypt the communications. It needs to be, first of all, written into your policies, whether that is going to serve as where you send the PIN or the banking details, etc. Because I think why they do that is your business email fraud. And we had a number of clients that actually lost quite a number of money, millions in terms of that. So it happens that you send an invoice, there is some malware in your system, that invoice is go via a middleman, and they change the banking details on the invoice and then send it to the client. And that also anticipates. So if they know that you are, let's say, a legal entity and you are responsible for, let's say a trust fund, or you're responsible for keeping your, when people buy property, is that they know there's going to be a transfer. And then they send that immediately to the client. So, yeah, you bought this house, the sale is going through, and you have to transfer X, Y, and Z. In the last case, it averaged about between a 3 and a 10 million that they do transfer that. And then we see people. There was actually a case in the courts where he bought a bakkie, and the money was transferred to a wrong account. Taken to court, and he had to pay twice for that bakkie, depending on whose fault is this now. So yes, I'm all for going, especially on your invoices, maybe make use of something like Xero or so that they can click and they can go to a cloud phase infrastructure where they can see, okay, but this is the invoice, and this is the banking details, and maybe your bank details is connected to that. I know F&B, if they confirm your account, then they send through a PIN as well. So you can utilize that. From a WhatsApp point of view, I think Telegram is more secure in terms of that, but Telegram has got its other issues. So for me, it is, how are you going to utilize that WhatsApp? Who's got control of the WhatsApp? Or do you have one group with all your clients, and manage the possible risk associated with that? And then, you know what, I'm all for using the technology, but just identify, but what can go wrong in that? And it's not necessarily that somebody is just going to go in and, hack into your WhatsApp.
So most of us on the call, we have our professional hats on now this morning, but we are all also human and we are consumers. And I think we are so easily the targets of these scams. Any interesting scams nowadays that you guys see, stuff that is perhaps new, cases that you can maybe share with our audience?
Yeah, every day is a new thing. Maybe connect that to the trends that we see. Ransomware as cybercrime, it evolves. So when a vulnerability is been exploited, then a patch is written there for, and you know what, that hole is, you know, all closed up, and they have to find another way in. So it evolved. Where if you look at the ransomware history, for instance, the first one was actually distributed via a floppy disk at the first AIDS conference in the US. So all of the attendees got a floppy, and they went home, and when the moment that they put it in, and then this message on, that they had to post a check. So they had to post a check and then wait for that mail to come back and say, but this is the code that they have to type in. Now, that is now it evolved into, you know what, the technology enables that. Just clicking on the link, and there you have, and you have to go and buy some bitcoins and pay that, etc. And one of the and your ransomware groups has developed so much that, you know what, they're running as a business. So they have got their own support desk. So you can, if you're the victim, you can call their support and say, you know what, I don't have a 2 million. You know what, this is too much. Can we maybe bring it down a bit? I need to have my data. And the funny case is that one of the clients, they said, no, you're lying, because we've got access to your financial records and you have the money to pay. And they had to pay. They didn't come down with the amount of money. So and also the other thing is about you know what, you can be part of a network without explicitly knowing that. You know, you can, we see a lot that they scan your malls. They ask for people that with your green ID, South African ID, that they will pay them at 2,000 or so. Just go with them. They open a bank account. FICA is there, so they are explicit there. And we have in one of our cases actually is that we had a lady on Facebook that became friends, and they started transferring money because she thought she won the lotto. Now the lesson there: if you don't buy a ticket, you're not going to win anything. So start there. And they sort of entice you continuously, you know, that you don't want to stop because you think this is going to happen. And the money that was transferred, and I think it was at the end, it was something like 250,000, oldish lady, and it was to a bank account held by a lady in Limpopo. Just, you know, no tech savvy. And suddenly she's part of a criminal network, and she's held liable because her bank account was used for transferring that money. And that's why your personal identity needs to, you know, you still need to somehow stay, make that safe, and make sure that nobody gain access to your data and what they possibly can do. You know, I'd go onto your social media and down a bit on where you are on holiday and what you are doing, and providing personal information. Stay away from posting something about your kids. Human trafficking is actually higher rated in terms of cybercrime than your normal financial crimes. So we have a huge human trafficking problem, and so I'm going down a route here, but just to show you that, yes, you know, there's that, and your sextortion. Sextortion is a big thing. Again, it goes back to cybercrime. You know, it's across borders, and there's so many formats of that. It's not just stealing the money, as you said earlier, and it's something that you need to teach whoever is in your direct vicinity, your family and your kids and your mom and your dad, and just the principles but this information stays, personal, and it needs to, it's like your bank PIN. You don't share that.
And I think that's very good advice in the sense that some of our advisors will deal with end clients, and their end clients are sometimes elderly people. And to say that, you do not trust any email that's being sent to you. You do not click on links in emails if you do not know the person that has sent it to you. And then also you make use of, I suppose, the security settings within your social media. So within Facebook, set it to private, set your Instagram to private. Your WhatsApp, you can even set so that no one can just add you to groups. So those are, I suppose, also first steps that you can take to protect yourselves, I would say, against these cyber crimes.
Yeah. And enable multi-factor authentication. Make sure that you have an antivirus system, and not just on your computer, but also on your phone. You think that you have all of your information anyway on your phone. And your phone is now connected suddenly to your smartwatch. You sit with the Internet of Things and all of these devices that connects you, and that enables just a way into getting available information on you. So your antivirus software, it's a VPN whenever you work from home, whether you have to work from a open Wi-Fi, something like simple, like if you're at the airport and you have to charge your phone, especially USB. USB has got two-way communication.
Wow.
Don't do that. Don't plug it in. You can plug it into the normal 2-point plug type of environment, but not the USB, especially not the USB-C. It's just know that this device that you walk with, it's got so much computing power. And you have so many. Look at the apps that you download. Look at what they have access to. Just look, if you see your battery is getting flat quite easily, go and look at what is eating that. Maybe there is an app that is sending some information all over. Yeah, and I think if you do that basics, try to also encrypt, in transit. But you do that. If you go to the URL and you see on top there HTTPS, make sure that S is there.
Yes.
Yes, just to make sure that it is secure. So it means that there's a secure protocol that's taking place between your browser or your app and the website. And I think just think twice. Don't just, there's something for free and I click on that. We want stuff for free, books and music, etc. I'd just rather say no.
And then maybe on the email itself as well, our company last year was also one of those that saw emails come through. It looked like one of our colleagues that would send it, the name and surname would pop up, but it wasn't. In fact, it was some sort of, and I'm not sure what the technical term was now for how they deal with this. But for a tip maybe is that you can literally go and view the full email address before you also then open the email or look at the email. But maybe share, I don't know, I'm not sure, you can maybe give us some guidance in terms of what do they call it when you are, is it part of email spoofing, or how do they term that?
Yeah, it's a spoofed email. So I can send an email and it will seem that you are the sender of that email. I think the easier way is a bit more technical. There's two things that you can do. So the first thing, whenever there's a link within the mail, because they will want you to click on some link. Don't click on the link, but just hover your mouse on that link. And then it will provide you with the URL. Now, how a URL operates is, all you have to look at is that last part before the .com, before the .coza, before the .org. Just that name there. Because that is the domain where that communication is going to take you, where that link is going to transfer to. So if it's apsa.co.za, it's going to apsa. So there can be 300 things before that. It can be myweb.login.apsa.co.za. You ignore that front part. It's about that last part before you have the domain. So it's a apsa.co. Then you know, okay, but that's going to apsa. But now they play around because you know that my apsa. So now it will be login.myapsa.co.za. My apsa is not apsa. It's two different. It looks the same, and that is how they want you. And you will maybe click on that, and you will see a perfect replica of apsa. And it's not. So all you do is just hover your mouse pointer on that link so that you can see, okay, but this is where I am going to be directed to. And if that is, and rather say, I'm rather going to type in my browser, but I'm going to apsa now. And then you know that is correct. Your digital certificate is in order, so you know that's a legit site. But if you anything else in a URL, because they like to change a letter or put something, maybe apsa with 2 B's, because they spell it with 2 S. And it's a total different site. So just be aware of that, and really, if you just take a second or two, I know, you know what, sometimes we in a hurry, and your boss wants this and that client wants that, and you click on links that rather type the URL in yourself and not go via link.
And are there ways that you can, or maybe systems or a program that you can install where people can't just make or take your email address and make it their own, so that they cannot use my email address like tanya.kutsi and then the rest is
there's a one, it's a DMARC protocol. So SendMark, for instance, can give you that stat. Takes a while, but can give you that ability to know, but this is a legit email, so it's not coming in from any other domain. It's a spoofed email, and we'll block that. So there is technology available to do that. You can also check just the header and see, okay, but the header will show you what is the actual name or the email address where it comes. But they get cleverer and cleverer with artificial intelligence. You know what? Sometimes it's very difficult to spot that it's a spoofed email, and that's why you have to rely on technology in some regards.
And I think that I mean, we've seen how a lot of just since the start of the year, there's been a lot of impersonation of companies. Old Mutual has been impersonated on, and it's typical on platforms like a Telegram or WhatsApp, where you think you're actually dealing with that group, and they so they impersonate the group. Do you think impersonation will become more and more of a thing going forward, especially in perhaps the financial
that's a
space?
classic phishing. Also, your identity theft that's associated with that, not just your brand, but your identity, and utilizing that for other means, whether to do e-commerce or whether to open bank accounts, or there's a number of cases of people that went out of the country or work maybe externally for a number of years, come back, want to buy a house, and now, no, you already own one, you know, because your identity has been used to do that. So the impersonation, yes, that is just going to, because it's people are, I think, trusting by default. And again, to me, it's also because we sit with, I think this cultural issues in Africa as well, because you get now a lot of people that's entering this digital domain, and without any sense of cybersecurity awareness, you know, they will just click, and they will they always get the you know, if you drive in the traffic and you see the people don't stop at the robot, you know, you will wait when it turns red, then 300 cars are still crossing that. Now, the thing is also, when that person, doesn't matter who it is, that person that does that in traffic, so they disregard any traffic rules, they will do exactly the same within your company, because now they stop at your company and they start working there. Okay, so they don't obey the rules outside. So why would they obey the rules inside? So that's something that you have to keep in mind, especially that previous question where you alluded to, about your insider, is just that, and that's where your awareness training is much broader than that. To maybe teach them how to drive as well.
But then in our industry, I mean, it all links back to being fit and proper and having certain ethical standards whenever you are actually appointed as a financial advisor. You're the custodian of your clients' funds and their trust. And I think it's what you now mentioned ties in very well with almost the ethical side of a person. And then maybe in closing, and I think it would be very valuable if you could maybe allude to some practical stuff for advisor businesses. I mean, by no means am I expecting you to literally go through like each thing that they need to implement, but if you had to walk into a financial advice practice, you go and visit your financial advisor today, what would you mention to them should be there? Maybe you mentioned that link where they can also go to and check, certain things, but what would be like a little tick box for them? Just maybe highlight 5 points that you think that they should now, when they leave this webinar, go and check in their own businesses and start to think a bit about the protocols and the risk mitigation systems that they have in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I want to start with have a risk register in place. And you can start by a very, sort of few columns one. You already have that most probably for the rest of your business on an operational level, on a financial level. Now just look at, what are the risks associated because you do business in the cyberspace. And where are you at risk? Because then you are able to assign resources to that. Now, the first risk that you need to add is that you're not compliant to the new standard. Okay, maybe look at your POPI as well, and what does it entail for you to become in a 12-month period, and what is going to be the consequences if you're not. Okay, and then look at basics. I think most of you either work in the Google environment or in the Microsoft environment. Now, the moment that you are on the Microsoft 365, for instance, just know that the security of your data is your responsibility and not that of Microsoft. Okay, so you still need to have control over that data. That typical for the POPI regulation, you had to have your ROPA, that just a record of your information flow. Just that is where does your information flow? Supply chain. What do you give to whom and on what authority? And also then backwards. So if you are doing business, for instance, with the banks, I know then they will send you this 500 questionnaire that you have to fill in, and they will come again and again and sort of audit you. Okay, so then it's a good thing to get your ducks in a row and make sure that your processes are in place. So that's from a governance perspective. From a policy, when you talk about the insiders, get your confidentiality agreements and your privacy agreements in place with your staff. Let them sign that. From your supply chain, service level agreements. Who is responsible for what, especially if data is transferred. Establish your roles and responsibilities for security, for privacy, who's the information officer, etc. And then on a more technical, practical level is make sure that you have a password policy and that's implemented. That, they have to change that every 2 or 3 months. It has to be a long one. Enable multi-factor authentication on all your platforms. Then have an antivirus software implemented, not the free version. The free version is malware. It's not antivirus software. Okay, so there are quite a number of good ones and not that expensive. From your Kaspersky's, I always say the Russians created the virus, so they can have a good solution as well. Your Bitdefenders and so forth. So there's quite a number of them. VPNs then, enable that VPN whenever you travel. And maybe just have that segregation on your phone, for instance. I don't know whether you are allowed to, per policy, that you have your company email as well as your Gmail address, and you open both on your phone. Immediately everything that's on your phone is integrated. So if I want to get access to your data, then that is just that. I can, if I have your Gmail, then I know what is the connected other email accounts.
Prof. Bierman, thank you really very much for attending our webinar. It was lovely meeting you, albeit online, but it was lovely meeting you. And thank you to all the guys that's on our call this morning. And this webinar will, as always, be on our YouTube channel. Please go and watch it or send it to your clients or other colleagues of yours if you need to. And then until we meet again, have a great day.